Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing something a bit different and going through all my first time watches from last month, giving some quick discussions and reviews of each film. I've left links to each film in the description for easy access if there's a particular film you want to see. If you're new here, don't forget to click that subscribe button, and without further ado, let's get into it. Tigers Are Not Afraid is a Mexican fantasy horror drama directed by Issa Lopez and follows a group of orphan children on the streets of an unnamed Mexican city ravaged by the Mexican drug war. So this film's quite similar to some of the work of Guillermo del Toro, mixing those horror and drama aspects with this kind of fantastical, magical realism. I think the film has a lot of strong moments, but its poor pacing makes for a very short runtime that seems a lot longer. And there's quite a lot of obnoxious use of shaky cam throughout, which I think detracts from some of the nicer photography in the film. I still think it's worth watching though, because it acts as a quite interesting allegory for the horrors that children face at the hands of the drug cartels. I think it's a pretty solid 6 out of 10. The Shape of Water is a pseudo-gothic retro fairy tale directed by Guillermo del Toro, which has some of the familiar stylings of his earlier film Pan's Labyrinth. However, instead of the post-Spanish Civil War, this film is set against the backdrop of the early 1960s Cold War and follows a mute janitor called Elisa, played by Sally Hawkins, who works in a top-secret government facility and forms a relationship with a captured humanoid amphibian creature. I thought the construction of this film was wonderful, from the way it was shot, the production design, and the beautiful and magical score from Alexander Desplat. The performance of Sally Hawkins is sublime, I thought, in just how she manages to convey her character's emotions and motivations without having to utter a single word. As I've seen someone else describe, it's kind of like Beauty and the Beast meets Creature from the Black Lagoon, which was a film that Guillermo del Toro was highly influenced by. It's a highly unconventional love story that I think probably prove alienating to some audiences, but it pushes this idea that love knows no bounds. It's an 8 out of 10 from me. City of Tiny Lights is a 2016 British crime thriller directed by Pete Travis and is set in a modern-day London following a private investigator played by Riz Ahmed, who becomes entangled in the world of religious fanaticism and political intrigue while he's investigating a missing persons case. I thought this film had a lot of kind of grimy style to it. It was sort of like this neo-noir, which I thought was pretty cool, but it's unfortunately let down by the very dodgy camera work throughout, and I thought the plot just wasn't interesting or engaging. The highlight is definitely Riz Ahmed's performance, as you'd expect, and also he has some really great chemistry with Billie Piper's character. I've not really seen her in a lot, other than like Doctor Who, but yeah, I don't think I can really recommend this one. It's a 4 out of 10 from me. The Diving Bell and the Butterfly is a 2007 French biographical drama film directed by Julien Schnabel, and it's based off the real-life memoirs of Jean-Dominique Bauby, the former editor of Elle, who suffered a devastating stroke which left him completely paralysed and only able to communicate with his left eye. I really like the first-person perspective that they used for kind of like the first half of the film here. It really helped you to get inside the mind of the character and experience the absolute horror of being able to kind of perceive the world around you but not be able to interact or communicate with it. It's really well done, really well shot. Some of the shots I'm still figuring out how they actually managed to do. Like there's one where they have to like sew up one of his eyes. Yeah, I don't know how they did it. It's kind of a shame that they didn't really stick with that perspective for the whole film, but I can understand why they kind of shifted away from it to kind of, diversify the film out a bit and be able to tell different kind of aspects of the story more effectively. I thought Mathieu Amory was fantastic in the lead role. Yep, I'd recommend this. It's a 7 out of 10 from me. Brassed Off is a 1996 British comedy drama film written and directed by Mark Herman and follows the troubles faced by a colliery brass band following the closure of the coal mine in South Yorkshire. The film reflects the real-life struggles faced by many following the end of the coal industry in Britain and their struggles to kind of retain hope in the circumstances. And the example in this film is this coal band using music as a way to, keep going. The film's very mismarketed, like all the posters show like Ewan McGregor and Tara Fitzgerald's character kind of like, smiling or whatever. It looks like it's going to be this like romantic comedy film, and it's not really. It's kind of in the vein of some of Ken Loach's work. It's very politically charged. It's very kind of anti-conservative, the message of the film. I thought Pete Postlethwaite was brilliant. He was a fantastic actor, and also Stephen Tompkinson surprised me. I thought he was very, very good as well. He had an excellent sort of monologue towards the end of the film. I've never really seen him outside of TV stuff before, so that was great to see. This film gets a 6 out of 10 from me. Days of the Bagnold Summer is the directorial debut from the former In-Betweeners star, Simon Bird. It's a funny and charming coming-of-age story that follows the dysfunctional relationship between a moody and nihilistic teenager and his depressed divorcee mother as they're forced to spend an entire summer together. The film manages to capture perfectly the awkwardness of British adolescence, and Earl Cave sells the pretentious and mopey teenager that is all too familiar to me. Monica Dolan was also great as Daniel's mum, Sue, and the use of Belle and Sebastian contrasted by heavy metal in the soundtrack was a great choice to mirror the inherent central conflicts of the film. It's a fairly standard and simplified story, and the film does lull quite badly in the middle section, but it shows promise for the future career of Simon Bird. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Assault on Precinct 13 is a 1976 American action thriller film directed by the legendary John Carpenter and revolves around the skeleton crew of a defunct police precinct who have to defend themselves against a relentless criminal gang who have sworn a blood oath of revenge against the police of Los Angeles. I thought this was a very solid action thriller. It harkens back to George A. Romero's classic horror and probably the godfather of all siege films, Night of the Living Dead, if you just replace the zombies with murderous gang members, that is. But there's some really great sequences throughout this film, and it pulls some very bold punches with some of the things it does, especially for the era. I also really love the score that John Carpenter wrote himself, as he's also a musician. I always love his scores. I don't know how well it actually complemented this film, but I really liked it. Very minimalistic and synth driven. I don't really have that much to say about this film. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. A fantastic directorial debut from Rose Glass, St. Maud is a deeply atmospheric and psychological horror that will get deep under your skin in a way similar to other contemporaries such as Under the Skin and The Witch. The horror doesn't come from an excess of jump scares or spooky ghosts and monsters, but from a real and tangible sense of dread and discomfort generated by the deeply unsettling atmosphere and wonderfully isolated and detached performance from the lead, Morfydd Clark. The film follows hospice nurse Maud, a recent convert to Roman Catholicism who becomes obsessed with a former dancer in her care, believing that she's obliged by God to save her soul. We enter the world and mind space of Maud as we question whether she is really a vessel of the divine or if she's going completely mad. At times we ponder whether there's even a clear distinction between the two. The score from Adam Janota-Zovsky and sound design from Paul Davis work excellently to help drag us deeper into the psyche of this troubled soul. I always love to see successful independent British films, and St. Maud is certainly another one to add to that pantheon. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. So here's a classic that I've only just got around to watching. The Big Lebowski is a 1998 crime comedy film written and directed by the Coen brothers, and stars Jeff Bridges as Jeffrey the Dude Lebowski, an LA slacker who's assaulted as a result of mistaken identity, and then learns that a millionaire, also named Jeffrey Lebowski, was the intended victim. After the millionaire Lebowski's trophy wife's kidnapped, he commissions the Dude to deliver the ransom to secure her release, but the plan goes awry when the Dude's friend Walter Sobchak, played by John Goodman, schemes to keep the ransom money for himself. I can't remember the last time I've seen a film that has this much star power. Alongside the two leads I mentioned, we've got Sam Elliott, Julianne Moore, Steve Buscemi, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Tara Reid, David Thewlis, Peter Stormare. It's just throughout the film, you're just pointing at the screen, oh, it's them. It's got everyone in it. Yeah, I particularly, though, out of all those, I really loved, Jeff Bridges and John Goodman's performances. They were the real standouts. They were both really fantastic. And I also just love the comedic, kind of surrealist dream sequences that are kind of peppered throughout. Those were wonderful. There's so many tiny details and references with this film that I think it probably just gets better and better with each subsequent rewatch. But for now, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Hidden Figures is a 2016 historical drama film directed by Theodore Melfi that tells the story of 3 African-American women and the role they played in the NASA program during the early 60s. Hidden Figures is the perfect example of a completely pedestrian, crowd-pleasing film. It's competently made, solidly acted, and touches heavily upon social and political issues of the past that still hold resonance today. However, there's nothing particularly interesting or stand out about the film that would help it to shine amongst a sea of endlessly similar films, and it will inevitably fade into obscurity over the coming years. It's the kind of film your parents would probably like, but it's not going to change your life by any stretch of the imagination. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. Kill List is certainly one of the more interesting and unconventional horror films I've had the pleasure of watching recently. The film begins as a slow-burn, violent crime thriller before morphing itself into a terrifying, visceral horror by the ending. Knowing director Ben Wheatley's other work, you'd expect this film to throw some surprises at you, and it doesn't disappoint. The film follows Jay and Gal, played by Neil Maskell and Michael Smiley, respectively, who are former British soldiers who have become contract killers in order to make a living. They accept a big job from a shadowy client that involves killing 3 targets. However, Jay appears to still be disturbed by an unspecified event that occurred during his time in Kiev, and this manifests within his behaviour on the job that continues to spiral out of control. The violence is brutal and unrelenting, and the atmosphere is kept deeply unsettling throughout by the use of a score that bears resemblance to Robert Eggers' The Witch. There's a constantly bubbling unease under the surface of this film, as we the audience feel there's something more going on than what we're being presented with. This mystery viciously bubbles over to the surface and reveals itself in the most uncompromising of manners that will shock you to your core. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. So here's another film that I've only just got around to watching. Saving Private Ryan's a 1998 war film directed by Steven Spielberg and follows a squad of American soldiers who have to go behind enemy lines to retrieve a paratrooper named Private Ryan, whose brothers have all been killed in action. Really, seeing this film on the big screen is an absolutely fantastic experience. The sound design is wonderful, and just hearing it come out of a loud, high-quality surround sound system was something to behold. The cinematography is stunning, and these intense battle sequences are full of long takes, close-ups, and handheld shaky cam, which are quite reminiscent and reminded me of some of the scenes in Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men. The immersive stuff that puts you right in the heart of the chaos. Seeing this film on a big screen just exemplifies everything tenfold, and you can never replicate that experience at home. So if you ever get a chance to watch this film in the cinema, do it. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. Director Yorgos Lanthimos reunites with Olivia Colman and Rachel Weisz in this 2018 black comedy drama that examines the relationship between cousins Sarah, Duchess of Marlborough, played by Rachel Weisz, and Abigail Mazim, played by Emma Stone, who are both vying to be the court favourite of Queen Anne, played by Olivia Colman. Olivia Colman knocks it out of the park here. I think she's an absolute national treasure, and it's amazing to see how far she's come since her early days in British television. I also really like Emma Stone's performance. She's quickly becoming one of my favourites, and I'm really excited to see what she works on in the future. Overall, the film in its style reminded me a lot of Lanthimos' earlier work, The Lobster, which is a film I really like, but I don't think The Favourite really reaches the same levels that The Lobster did, in my opinion. I really think either this or Black Klansman should have won Best Picture over Green Book at the 2019 Oscars. That's something I'm still not over. But anyway, I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10. So to round things off, we have Miguel Lanzo's wonderfully named Jesus Shows You the Way to the Highway, which follows CIA agents Palmer and Gargano, who are tasked with the mission of destroying a computer virus called Soviet Union. Driven by the purposefully offbeat acting and line delivery combined with the comically horrible audio dubbing, Jesus Shows You the Way to the Highway pays tribute to the low to no budget flicks from the 70s and 80s. Shot on 16mm camera and with liberal use of vintage technology, it perfectly captures the retro-futuristic aesthetic of films of that era. Accompanied by a cacophonous and eclectic soundtrack, the film's almost like a Arnold Schoenberg symphony put to screen. It's loud, it's discordant, and it shouldn't make sense, but it remains staunchly loyal to the internal logic of itself. Perfectly ordered chaos. This is one of the most gloriously insane experiences I've had with a film for a while, and I had a big grin on my face for the whole time. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. And with that, we've come to the end. If you're still watching this, thanks for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you've seen these films, let me know what you think about them in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in another video.